Chapter 4. It took Karen less than an hour to arrive after we called her. She got out of the Eber and closed the car door behind her. We watched her from the diner window like she was an exhibit at the zoo and waited to see what would happen next. "Hello, boys. I can't believe it took you this long to call me." She had known we were watching and had eluded us. Karen had incredible tactical skills, and one of her survival instincts is knowing when someone is watching. I think it goes back to our animal instincts, but Karen just says that she's that good. She sat her purse on the table, rolled her small suitcase next to the booth, and slid in. "I'm reporting that car to the company. I think it needs a reboot or a software update. It did a rolling stop through all the stop signs, and it sped up after it found out my name was Karen." She pulled up the website and typed her report as we talked. Karen was completely integrated into society. She had been that way since civilization became a thing. She pulled her planner out of her black leather purse that had a big golden G on it. Probably stands for girl, I thought. Okay, so on the drive here, I was planning out what we should do. She pulled out a map and 4 tickets for the water bond. "We have 30 minutes before it leaves, so let's get the check and get out of here." She waved down the waitress. "Check, please," she hollered. Yeti covered the side of his face with his hand. "No need to be so loud. She is working hard," he mumbled. Karen looked at us for the first time. "Excuse me for being direct and telling people what I need in a kind but firm manner. You all would have wasted 15 minutes waiting for her to come by the table because you didn't want to hurt her feelings and then been huffy about having to wait. She is a tough, capable woman. You should treat her as such. People respect directness just like Bigfoots do." Karen pointed to our clothes. "What in the world are you 3 wearing? Did you all decide to become superheroes in the past 100 years? We have to get you all some clothes before we board the train. We are trying to keep us Bigfoots a secret." The waitress came over and gave us the check. "Oh, hey girl, I love your purse. Where did you get it?" Karen and the waitress then spent the next 5 minutes talking about purses. I guess Karen does actually know how to read people. "So, do you think we still have time for dessert?" Yeti said. Skunk, Yeti, and I laughed together. We paid the bill and left. Karen made us walk to the water bond. She told us we couldn't take a car because we needed to keep our health up, but I think she just wanted to make sure we had proper clothes for the train. She made us go into 2 stores before she was satisfied with our new outfits. I personally thought our Star Journey clothes were better, but I kept that to myself. There was no arguing with Karen, and I wanted to catch our train. The water bond waits for no human or beast. We walked downstairs into an underground railway. This was my first time on the water bond. I heard it had revolutionized travel and was faster than flying and more comfortable. It might have been more enjoyable if Karen hadn't been rushing us past the ticket booth and towards the high-powered train. It looked like a subway train to me, but I only got a glimpse of it before I was pushed inside. I sighed. What other great discoveries had I missed out on because I had hidden away in the woods? I thought I had done the right thing being a recluse, but now after seeing so many wonderful things, I was beginning to wonder. "Now leaving for Waterloo, please keep your hands and feet inside the train at all times," I heard the voice over the speakers. "Keep walking, you 3. We aren't to our seats yet, and I don't want any trouble from the ticket inspector. I think our outfits are convincing, but it's best not to push our luck. I got us 2 cabin rooms. Let's put our stuff down and then meet up in Bigfoot's room to discuss the plan I came up with." Yeti grumbled and tried to make himself as small as he could as we went through the aisle. Sorry about that. Yeti was slightly too large for the aisle, and his furry arms bumped into every passenger as we walked down the aisle. She does know she is the only one with stuff to put up. Karen had a pink rolly suitcase with her. We came to the end of the train car. "Here we are," said Karen. She gave us a key. "Meet you in your cabin in 10 minutes. She unlocked her door and disappeared behind it. "What does she need 10 minutes for?" asked Skunk. I opened the door and we all managed to shove ourselves in. There were 2 sets of bunk beds on each side and a table in the middle. "She doesn't. It's clearly a power move, Skunk," snapped Yeti. "Remember who we are dealing with here. I can't believe we had to call her." He fell into the bottom bunk bed and hit his head. "She is probably just changing her outfit, Yeti. We need her, and you know it." I patted him on the shoulder. "I know. Karen has many gifts, and one of them is annoying you." I sat down on the bunk. I was starting to feel queasy. The train had been moving for about 10 minutes now. I heard a knock on the door. "Come in, Karen." She strolled in with her planner in hand and wore a fanny pack and a large hat. This must be Karen's traveler look. "You're looking green, Bigfoot." I felt green. I had forgotten that I had horrible motion sickness. I looked around the room for a trash can and found a tiny red one and grabbed it. I was prepared for whatever may happen next. Karen unzipped her fanny pack and handed me some motion sickness medicine. "Thanks, Karen. I remember you don't travel well. The last time we rode a train together, you threw up in my purse, and I am not taking any chances this time." She put her planner on the table. She was right. That had happened the last time we traveled together. I guess I still owed her a purse. "Does anyone else need something before we begin? I don't want to be interrupted." She gave a bag of Chief's Puffs to Yeti and a bag of onion rings to Skunk. They nodded. Karen had thought of everything. "You all are not going to like this, but I have run the numbers, and it is the only way with the time we have left to save Bob." I stood up a little straighter. It was never good when Karen came right out and said something. This was going to be really bad. Skunk stopped eating his onion rings, and Yeti stuffed another handful of cheese puffs into his mouth. "Ready," Yeti mumbled with a full mouth, and Skunk and I nodded. "We have to go back home," Karen said. "Like home, home? Like where we were born?" I asked. I was starting to sweat. Surely this wasn't her plan. "We can't go back there, Karen. They hate us. We lost Bob. What do you think they're going to do to us when we just show up?" Yeti was stuffing as many cheese puffs as would fit into his mouth at a time. Why? But it was more of a rhetorical question. He didn't want to know the answer. Now he was giving himself a hug. It was going to be a minute before he had processed what had happened. "We have to go back because that is the only place to get a rocket ship. They have the practice one we built with Bob. It can hold our weight and we can launch there without NASA knowing what we are doing. We can get to Bob first." Karen was smiling. She really thought this was a good idea. "Dang, universe, you got me good," was Skunk's reply. He had zoned out. The information was too much for him. I gulped. I wish Karen had gotten me a ginger ale. This was really happening. We were going to have to go back to the original Bigfoot village. What do you think they will do to us when we get there? I asked the question all of us had been thinking. "Well, they aren't going to do away with us, or I would never have suggested going back there," Karen said confidently. She adjusted her fanny pack and played with the sash on her jacket. For Karen to fidget at all meant she was extremely nervous as well. "But they won't be kind. We did accidentally blow up one of the 2 exits to the outside world after we destroyed their favorite fruit tree supply." I had to admit that after I heard Karen recount the events, it did sound pretty bad. Yeti took a breath in between cheese puffs. "Yeah, no biggie." He shoved another handful into his mouth. "Mama Yeti still won't speak to me." He looked into his empty chip bag and his eyes watered. This was usually where Skunk would pat his arm, but Skunk was still so freaked out about going back to the Bigfoot village that he was paralyzed with fear. I patted Yeti on the shoulder. We understood what he was going through. "How are we going to get there, Karen? And if we do get there, will they even let us in?" I was imagining the villagers with pitchforks ready to drive us out. "Don't worry, I have a plan for both situations. Once we are in Waterloo, we can catch a bus to Loch Ness, and the other plan is a surprise." Karen smiled. "And then home," I whispered. I trusted Karen. She had thought of everything, and I knew it would work, but I wasn't looking forward to going back to the village. None of us were. We spent the remainder of the ride in silence. Skunk was zoned out in fear, and Yeti was still hugging himself. Each alone with our thoughts of what the villagers would do or not do to us. What was Karen's plan, and what would make everything okay, or at least not make the villagers want to resent us. We arrived at Waterloo the next morning. It was a beautiful July day in London. It took all of my willpower to get off the train. I knew what was awaiting us. We all did. I looked at the red and white train that we had arrived on, and then looked at the large group of people that were moving toward the exits. I usually didn't like the hustle and bustle of the big city, but today I found it comforting. It was nice to be just another face in the crowd. "Come on, boys, let's go check the bus schedule and see what bus we need to take." Karen motioned for us to follow her. She led us to the middle of the station where the digital bus schedules were. "Oh, there we are. The first bus to Stroney leaves in 2 hours. Looks like we've got some time." You know I have always wanted to ride the London Eye, said Skunk. Okay, I think some sightseeing would be nice. We just have to watch our time. Karen smiled and started walking to the exit, wheeling her suitcase behind her. Has anyone else noticed that guy who has been staring at us? He is making me feel uneasy. Skunk shivered. What guy? Yeti looked around. I am sure it was nothing, Skunk. There are a lot of people here, and some are bound to notice our good looks. Karen flipped her hair. I had a feeling she wasn't talking about all of us. I guess you're right. To the London Eye, said Skunk. As soon as we walked out of the Waterbond station, we could see the London Eye Ferris wheel. Isn't it cool? It's even bigger in person than I imagined, said Skunk. Yes, and it is close to the bus station. Good choice. Karen smiled at him. The closer we got to the Ferris wheel, the quicker we noticed how long the line was to ride. We are going to be waiting for hours, Yeti said. I don't want to spend the whole time in line. I couldn't help agreeing with him, but I knew Skunk had his heart set on riding the Eye. What if we went and saw some other sights and then circled back here on our way to the bus station? I bet the line won't be as long, I offered. Okay, I guess that will work. Yeti pointed. I want to go see that big clock tower over there. Do you mean Big Ben? Karen huffed. You'd think after all these years you would have learned at least some of the landmarks. Actually, Big Ben is the bell inside the clock. The tower itself is called the Great Clock of Westminster, Skunk said while slowly fist-bumping Yeti. Karen gave them the stink eye and continued walking. We crossed a large bridge and made our way to the big clock tower, as Yeti had called it. It was amazing up close as it was far away. The clock face was huge. We couldn't go into the tower, so Karen decided to take pictures of us outside. Next, we went to Buckingham Palace. Karen says a queen lives there. That is why all the guards in big black hats are protecting it. I enjoyed the fountain at the palace. It was a nice place to refresh yourself. I only got to stick my feet in before Karen yelled at me. We took a group picture in front of the fountain, and I think we all looked great. I should ask Karen to send it to me. I'm hungry, Yeti said, and then his stomach growled. Me too. We haven't had any food since the train, I chimed in. London is famous for its fish and chips, Karen told us. We should look for a stand and give them a try. I love fries, I said. Why do they call them chips? Karen shrugged. I don't know. Seems like there are a few things you don't know. Skunk gave Yeti a high five and Karen pretended not to hear them. We walked around until we located a fish and chips stand called Jolly Jim's Fish and Chips. When we got to the front to order, Yeti whispered to me, he doesn't look very jolly. We ordered 10 meals between the four of us, and it was delicious. Maybe Jim wasn't jolly, but his fish and chips sure were. We sat on a bench finishing up our meals when Skunk grimaced. There's that guy from the train station. I swear he has been following us since Waterloo. I can feel it. Point him out, Skunk. I will deal with this, said Karen, and we had no doubt that she would. He's right there. We all looked to where he was pointing, but no one was there. I swear, you guys, he was right there. Yeti put his hand on Skunk's shoulder. Sure he was. I think that Waterbond messed with your head. Don't get me wrong. You have always been a little out there, but this is a new level. Skunk swatted Yeti's hand away. I'm telling you, he was there. Karen and I looked at each other. We weren't quite sure what to say. Skunk had never lied to us, but we hadn't seen anyone. Let's keep our eyes peeled then, to be on the safe side, I said, and Karen nodded in agreement and tossed Yeti a look. We should head back to the bus station. We don't want to miss our bus to Loch Ness, Karen said. We started making our way back when we came to the London Eye. Look, the lines aren't that long. He looked at his watch. We should have time if we go now. Skunk looked at Karen with his big swampy eyes. All right, but we need to be quick about it, Karen smiled. I have been wanting to ride the Eye for a while now myself. We got in line and it looked like we were going to make it on the last car. We were just waiting for someone to join us. There were a few people behind us, but no one seemed interested in riding with us. Yeti looked at us and whispered, Do I smell? No, Yeti, it's because we are so big. They think the car can't hold our weight. I looked at her. Can it? Now I was a little worried myself. We all took our seats, and right before the attendant closed the door, a man jumped in our car. It's him, Bigfoot, the one who has been following us, Skunk whispered in my ear. I looked at the stranger and smiled. I had not been expecting this to happen on the London Eye. We were all trapped together until the ride was over. Don't worry, Skunk. I'm sure he's harmless. Let's just keep cool and see what happens. I quickly whispered the information to Karen, who then passed it on to Yeti. So what brings you to London? Asked the stranger. He had on a black trench coat and slicked back hair. Oh, just seeing the sights, I said. That seemed like a normal enough question. He smiled at Karen. What an unusual color for a suitcase, he said. I wasn't aware that pink was an unusual color, she said. We all looked at each other and wondered where this awkward conversation was going. I leaned over to Skunk. I think you were right about something being off about this guy. The Ferris wheel had reached the top and had come to a stop. We all pretended to take in the amazing view so we didn't have to talk to the stranger. We should probably make a run for it when the ride is over, I whispered to everyone. The ride started moving again. We don't have much time. Hand over the suitcase, he said. Karen looked at him. I am not handing this suitcase to you or anyone else. She gave him a stern look. I respect your dedication to the mission. I myself wouldn't have given up the suitcase either. He winked at her. I knew you were one of us the moment I saw you. Such poise and elegance. We need to lose this guy, she whispered to us. I have no idea what he is talking about. The ride was coming to an end and we were about to get off. If you want to make the delivery yourself, then you will need to follow me, he said. I'm not sure who you think I am, but we have a bus to catch, Karen said as she made herself bigger. I'm afraid you won't be going anywhere until we deliver that suitcase. The ride came to a stop and the attendant opened the door. I just received intel that the Toledo boys arrived in London today. It is only a matter of time before they find us and try to take the suitcase. We have to get away from all these civilians. We don't want anyone caught in the crossfire. He grabbed Karen's hand and led her off the Ferris wheel. All I could think about was who are the Toledo boys, what is in Karen's suitcase, and was this man from MI6? I felt like we had no choice but to follow him. We didn't want anyone to get hurt. Where are we going? Skunk asked. I can't tell you that. It's classified. Skunk looked at us and mouthed the word classified. We followed the tall, dark stranger to a large building. It was eerily quiet in the building. It seemed obvious that it was being used as a hideout. He brought us to a work elevator. After you. He held out his hand for us to get in. We stepped in and he pulled down what looked like a metal cage and pushed the button. I began to wonder if this was a huge mistake. The elevator kept going down and down. I looked at Karen. Do you think we will ever get off this thing? As soon as I had spoken those words, the elevator stopped and the man opened the door to an enormous parking garage. Should we make a run for it? I asked. Where would we even run to? Asked Karen, and she had a point. I think we will just have to see where this goes. The stranger threw Karen a set of keys. Follow me. He led us to a car and a van. You all take the van. We need to get out of here as soon as possible. We don't want them to find us. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I knew from my experience that this wasn't going to go smoothly. I haven't driven a car in ages, Karen said. She looked at us, trying to assess which of us would be the best driver. Before she could pass off the keys to someone else, an alarm sounded in the garage with flashing lights. The man got in his car and started it up. Don't stop for anything or anyone. Karen stood there not knowing what to do in this situation. So I grabbed the keys from her and we all crammed into the van. I put the van in drive and followed the stranger through one of the tunnels. Where do you think we are? I asked Karen. It looks like we are in an underground sewer system or some old forgotten catacombs in London. She looked at her phone. I definitely don't get service down here. Let's just follow this guy until we can get out of here. I noticed some lights rapidly approaching. Guys, we've got company, said Skunk. I looked in the rearview mirror and 2 black SUVs were gaining on us. What do they have in those engines? Nitro? I looked at the screen. I was trying to figure out the map when the voice of the stranger said, Turn left. I turned a hard left and drifted into another tunnel. I looked back. I hope I had lost the cars trailing us, but they were no amateurs. They were on our tail again in no time, and to make things worse, there were now 3 cars. There was another straight away. I put the pedal to the metal as I tried to escape them. Turn right. I did as the voice commanded. Look out, Skunk shouted. A 4th car came out of nowhere and was in front of us. We were being sandwiched with no path to escape. The van in front opened the back door. What are they planning on doing? Are they going to jump on the car? Karen wondered. Spikes! Yeti screamed. They threw a long roll of spikes in front of our van. I did my best to avoid them, but both right side tires blew out and I had trouble controlling the van. The SUVs were gaining on us now, and I knew we weren't going to make it if we didn't do something quick. You're approaching a fork in the road. I need you to turn right and we will meet up at the rendezvous point. That's when things will get spicy. I hope your aim is as good as your driving. Aim? Okay, I'm out. We need to lose these goons and that stranger as well. We have to turn left up ahead. Karen looked at us for approval. All of us nodded. Okay, everyone, on the count of 3, lean all of your weight to the left. 1, 2, 3, lean! I stomped on the pedal and urged the van on with everything it had left. We drove straight to the light, not knowing where it was going to take us, but what choice did we have? The van went careening through the opening and shot us out of the catacombs into the unknown. We slammed to a screeching halt. There was a giant boulder in the field that we shot out of. It must have been a secret passageway. Is everyone okay? Karen asked. We all looked at each other. I think so, I said, but this van is in pretty bad shape. I looked out the car's cracked windshield trying to figure out where we were. It was dark and nothing looked familiar. The screen on the dashboard started talking again and I smashed it. I was done taking orders. That was awesome. Yeti fist pumped the ceiling. I told you that guy following us was strange, Skunk said, feeling vindicated. You should have just handed over the suitcase, Karen, and we wouldn't be in this mess. I scowled at her. I couldn't, Bigfoot, or I would have, but I just couldn't. She hugged the suitcase like her life depended on it, so I decided to drop it. It wasn't like blaming her was going to get us to Loch Ness any quicker. Everyone out of the van and let's start walking. There has to be some form of transportation around here. We all got out of the van and looked around. We are in the middle of nowhere. This is all my fault, Karen said. Her distress was beginning to show. I looked at Skunk and Yeti. We had never seen Karen like this before. If she was this upset, things couldn't be good. We got onto the only road in sight and walked in silence for an hour before Yeti's stomach began to growl. I wish I had some food, said Yeti. Karen stopped, unzipped the top compartment of her suitcase, and pulled out a bag of cheese puffs. She handed them to Yeti. I know you always get hungry, she told him and kept walking. Thanks, Karen. Yeti held the bag of cheese puffs like they were a prize. We heard a truck coming down the twisting hill behind us. Maybe that truck will pick us up. I hope so. That is the first car that is going our way since we started walking. Don't worry, guys. I will take care of this. Karen held up her arm like she was hailing a cab. I was worried, but the truck pulled over. He was carrying sheep in the back. The farmer rolled down his window and his border collie poked its head out of the window to look at us. Don't mind Angus. He won't bite you. You 4 need a ride? Where are you headed? He said in a strong Scottish accent. Yes, we need to get to Loch Ness, Karen replied. Where on the loch, dear? It's a pretty big place. Stroney, do you know it? I do, dear. You and your friends can ride with the sheep. I will be going as far as Lenny. You can walk the rest of the way from there. Tell your friends to hop in the back, but be careful of the sheep. Unlike Angus over here, they like to take a nibble. Thank you, Karen said, and got in the back. She tried to sit as far away from the sheep as she could, but with all of us in the bed of the truck, it was inevitable. We were squeezed in like sardines in a can, and it stank so bad that it made Yeti smell like roses in comparison. A ram kept giving Karen the eye. Bigfoot, trade places with me, she said. We switched. I don't think the sheep like this any more than we do. Well, except for Skunk, I told her. He was petting the sheep like they had been friends for years. Better make ourselves comfortable. We have a few hours before we get to Stroney. Yeti was using another sheep as a pillow and was already taking a nap. I envied his and Skunk's ability to adapt to any situation. Karen and I didn't find it so easy. We rode along the countryside with the wind blowing in our hair, and I wondered how Bob had adapted to Mars. It couldn't have been easy. I was having trouble adapting to this technological world, and I had friends, but Bob didn't have anyone. I felt tears slide down my hairy face. Oh, Bob, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that by yourself. I wiped my eyes. Not only had I failed Bob as a leader, but I had also failed him as a friend. Never again, I thought. Never again. Chapter 5. The truck let us out right at the Welcome to Stroney sign. Watch yourselves, it's getting dark soon, he said, before he slowly pulled back onto the road with the sheep baying loudly. I saw Skunk waving at them, and they seemed to be saying their goodbyes. Those were some nice sheep, Skunk said. I smiled. The sun had gone down a little while ago. We need to get to the loch, I told Karen. She nodded. Let's go to the castle ruins. It's the best place to call her, she said. I remember when those ruins were a castle. I am not sure if seeing it will make me feel old or nostalgic. Either way, I always appreciate seeing the passage of time. Karen snickered. When you've been around as long as we have, everything makes you feel old. Come on, this way. She didn't have to tell us the way anymore. We all knew the landscape by heart, no matter how much it changed throughout the years. The smells were the same, and there was a magnetic pull that always drew us towards home. I breathed in deeply and could taste the lake in the air. I wasn't looking forward to going home, but this was nice. We're here, Yeti said. I looked at the loch before us. It was completely dark now, besides for the moon reflected on the obsidian water. We were all quiet for a minute. We knew it was only a matter of time before we were back home. Karen broke the silence. Don't worry, I'll call her. Karen threw back her head and let out something between a howl and a screech. Skunk, Yeti, and I looked at each other and laughed. One of you try then if you can do better. She smoothed out her outfit. Skunk gave it a try next. It was a ghastly howl that would be expected out of a swamp creature, but it still wasn't right. Me next, said Yeti. His sounded like an angry bear. You do it, Bigfoot. We are never getting anywhere with these two. She pushed me forward. I leaned my head back and did a yodeling howl. I knew as soon as I felt the vibrations leave my throat that she would come, and within a few seconds we saw the water start to part like a submarine about to break the surface. We stepped back and gave Nessie room. She was our ride back to the land of Bigfoots. Welcome back. I told you we would see each other again, Bigfoot, she said. She was cheerful as ever and was the kindest water monster I had ever met. That call was beautiful. I thought it was one of my own kind calling me. There are just some things you don't forget. All those summer lessons you gave me really paid off. Show off, Karen muttered. It's good to have you back. Jump on and I will have you there in a jiffy. She held out her fin and one by one we sat on her back. Everybody on? Yes, I said. All right, hold your breath and down we go. She dove head first beneath the surface and the water began to swirl around us. She moved through the dark water effortlessly. I clung to her neck for my life. I could feel Karen squeeze my waist tighter the deeper we went. The light appeared at the bottom of the loch. It was getting brighter, and I could feel the tug of home get so close it was overwhelming. Just when I thought I couldn't hold my breath anymore, we dove through the light and surfaced into the tropical land of the Bigfoots. It was a land that time forgot, but we never would. Nessie swam in place for a moment. She was letting us take in the view before we reached the weathered pier. All the greens of the forest caught my eye. It was a mix of a rainforest and the Everglades. It was an untamed beauty not found anywhere else in the world. No matter how worried we were to be going back to the Bigfoot village, there was still a feeling of peace knowing you were home. But that peace lasted only for a moment. Nessie started to move toward the pier and the knot in my stomach started to grow. What was going to happen to us? It's nice to hear the bird songs again, said Skunk. Of course he would have missed the music from this magical place. He hummed along with them. Everybody off. She smiled and showed all of her teeth. I will be waiting close by if you need me. She nodded to us before she sank back into the water. We stood there watching the ripples on the water till they disappeared. No one wanted to go any further because we all knew what was waiting for us wouldn't be pleasant. A bird waddled our way. Is that Dodie? I asked. Yes, of course. Who else could it be? Never thought I would see you four here again. Some people don't know how to stay away, she said and looked down her beak at us. I smiled. It was nice to see some things hadn't changed. Nice to see you too, Dodie. How is everyone? Better than you all are going to be. You have a lot of guts to show your face here after what happened. I scratched my head and Yeti and Skunk were pretending to whistle. Karen was full on glaring at Dodie. It wasn't like she was telling us something we didn't know. Well, I will catch you four later if you're still around after the villagers get done with you. She waddled away and flipped her feathers as she walked away. After she was out of earshot, Karen turned to us. I can't say I missed her. We all nodded. Karen got her suitcase and we started walking down the jungle path to the village. We had never walked home so slowly in our lives. What do you think they will do to us? Asked Yeti as he bit his nails. I don't know, said Karen. Probably shame us mercilessly until we wished we were dead. Skunk, Yeti, and I all looked at her. We couldn't believe she said that out loud, even if it was true. We had left on terrible terms, but a Bigfoot was always allowed to come back to their home. It was written into the code of the Bigfoot Nation. It was just that when most Bigfoots had messed up, they weren't dumb enough to come back. The last Bigfoot to mess up as bad as we hadn't been back in at least 5,000 years. It's over the next hill, I said. We all looked at the incline in front of us. Karen jumped behind a tree. Maybe we should do some surveillance and find the opportune moment to walk in, said Karen. I had never seen her hide behind anything in my life. Skunk was soon on all fours, inching his way over the hill. I can see my old house from here, said Skunk. Yeti was right beside him now. There's Mama's house. Yeti had been heartbroken that his mother had refused to speak to him since the incident. Is that your old girlfriend Tabitha down there by the well? Skunk asked and pointed. Yeti followed his direction and spotted her. I hope she doesn't hurt you when she finds out about Wendy. Skunk poked Yeti in the arm. You did just up and leave her without a goodbye. Lady Bigfoots don't forget things like that. How would you know about Lady Bigfoots? Karen asked. I have never seen you with one. Karen, we only see each other once every 100 years now. I know some ladies. I think Skunk was the only one convinced that he knew some ladies at this point, but we had bigger problems at the moment. Skunk quickly changed the subject and pointed out his band. They are still playing those same old tunes. Man, I could show them a whole new world on those bush guitars and log drums. Insane. He started playing his air guitar. Skunk could be about to fall off a cliff, and his last thought would be about a chord. Oh my cryptid, did they reverse my irrigation system? I mean, I knew they were mad at me, but to go against me at the cost of productivity, that is low. She huffed and leaned against the tree. I think they are angrier with us than I first thought. She clutched her suitcase and looked at the path back toward the pier where Nessie was still waiting. I knew how they were feeling, but we couldn't give up. Come on, gang, let's do this for Bob. I stood on the path and waited for them to stop hiding and join me. It took a few minutes, but eventually we were ready to go down the hill and into Bigfoot Village. For Bob, Karen said as we began our descent. It took a few seconds for anyone to notice us. At first I thought, so far so good, but as we began to get closer to the village, I could hear the whispers and the looks of disgust as we entered. What are they doing here? I heard Terry the hut builder say to his wife. And the comments continued. Someone threw a rotten banana at my head. The village looked the same as it had 100 years ago. Round huts scattered throughout the village with children playing and Bigfoots working on nets and baskets. They all stopped when they saw us. We were going to the middle of the village where the Bigfoot elders sat and gave advice. We were finally standing in front of them. My heart was racing. I had forgotten the others were even there. These were the original Bigfoots, and they demanded nothing but respect. I was a little scared to be in their presence, especially since we had caused so much trouble in the past. What are you doing here? Asked Krill. He was the oldest village elder. It's about Bob. I stepped forward. He made it to Mars, and now we need to save him before the humans find him. Krill scoffed. It's just like you four to come back and ask for help when you don't deserve it. Do you even have a plan? Bob is probably safer on Mars than with you. He shook his furry head and his driftwood staff at us. Karen stepped up. Krill had always respected her planning more than mine. The elders were looking back at each other now, probably deciding what to do with us. If you won't help us, Karen said, then help yourselves. If Bob is discovered on Mars, it is only a matter of time before we are discovered, and then this place as well. She used her hands for emphasis. Karen was good at getting her point across. Krill crossed his arms. I'm disappointed in you, Karen. I would have expected such behavior from them, but not you. He pointed to me, Skunk, and Yeti. Trouble follows you wherever you go, and we want no part in your schemes. Krill sat down on the stump next to the fire. Agatha, another elder of the village, stood up. We never believed you would have come back here. It is the right of every Bigfoot to live in this village and this land, but that is all we owe you and nothing else. She turned her back to us and sat by the fire. The rest of the village took their cue from the elders and did the same. No one would look at us or speak to us. Mama, Yeti said, but she gave him a cold shoulder just like the rest. Karen led Yeti by the arm. Come on, guys, let's go to the old barn. We don't have much time. We followed Karen out of the village until we came to the forest again. A couple of miles past the village was our laboratory. It was where we built the spaceship that had sent Bob to Mars in the first place. We had built a large barn to house our experiments. Do you think it's all still in there? I asked. I doubt anyone touched it, said Yeti. We are tainted after all. He was still feeling the sting of rejection. Just like the land, said Skunk. He was right. Our experiments had killed all the 8 fruit trees, and that had made life extremely hard for the villagers. And then we went and lost Bob. I knew if the shoe were on the other foot, I would hate us too. Come on, guys, we have work to do. Karen headed into the barn. The barn looked like it hadn't been touched in the 100 years we were gone. I guess we should be grateful that the villagers didn't set it on fire after we left. The door was open, and when we went in it, it was filled with cobwebs and dust. Our glorious creation was sitting in front of us, covered in a giant dusty tarp. This was the moment of truth, if what we had come back was worth it. We might as well see what we're working with, I said. I was holding my breath as I pulled the tarp down to reveal the spaceship. It wasn't in great shape. I remember it being shinier, Skunk said. Yeti climbed into the hole and started pressing buttons. Yeah, and fully functional. This was not looking good for us. The spaceship was rusty and the electric system was faulty from years of being exposed to the elements. The tarp had done the bare minimum to protect it. What are we going to do now? This is going to take a week to fix at least, and we only have a few days. I wanted to cry. I knew it was un-Bigfootly of me to do so, but what else could I do? I had only felt this powerless once before, and that was when we lost Bob in space. Was Krill right about us? About me? Karen rolled her suitcase in front of the spaceship and looked at us. Well, we aren't going to give up, that's for sure. Are you finally going to show us what's in the suitcase? Yeti asked. Skunk perked up a little at this thought. His curiosity always outweighed whatever other emotion he was feeling. Yes, I am. Karen was silent for a moment. She was really building up the dramatic reveal. She unzipped her suitcase to show us a bag full of tiny seeds. Are those what I think they are? I asked. Yes, said Karen. Wait a minute, what do you think they are? Yeti asked and then looked confused. I smiled. I can't believe you found a way to replicate them. I know, it took 99 years to figure it out. It was no small feat if I do say so myself. She took them out of her suitcase and showed us the seeds in the plastic bag. Beautiful, said Skunk. I never thought I would get the chance to eat an ape fruit again. I knew how he felt. There was nothing like the sweet taste of an ape fruit. It was wonderful. This was a huge victory for us. Will they really grow here? I asked. I have only tested them in a lab, but they should work here. What are we waiting for? Let's go plant them and see if they work. Yeti was already heading out of the barn door. If this works, maybe they will forgive us, and maybe Mama will speak to me again. We headed out to the fields behind the barn. The barren land lay before us as the sun was setting. Karen passed us each a pouch of seeds. These don't need to be put too deep into the ground to grow. Place one seed in the ground, cover it with dirt, walk 5 steps, and then repeat. Any questions? Karen asked. We nodded our heads. It was a fairly simple task, but the 8 fruit trees in the past had covered acres of land. We had our work cut out for us. We each started at a different end of the field and began our arduous task of planting the 8 fruit seeds. Skunk whistled a tune while we worked, and it made the time go by faster. Many hours and a few acres later, we were almost done. It had taken us all night to plant all of Karen's seeds, but if most of them came up, we would have restored the 8 fruit trees and made up for at least one of our mistakes. By mid-morning, we were working on the spaceship again. I had no idea how we were going to get it done. We had ripped the side paneling off and were working on rewiring the rocket engine. I hear footsteps, Skunk said. We have been making a lot of noise, said Karen. I bet they have come to see what we are up to. No matter how mad a Bigfoot might be at someone, curiosity will always win out over anger. We stood outside of the barn, ready to meet them. Krill was leading the mob. He leaned on his staff while he looked at us. What have you all been up to? I heard Skunk whistling all last night. Couldn't get a wink of sleep because of it. Krill peered at us with his piercing brown eyes, searching our faces for signs of suspicion, but he would find none. This time we had been up all night doing good. No one had noticed that the 8 fruit trees were starting to grow. The combination of Karen's fast-growing seeds and the magically rich soil were working together beautifully. They would be producing fruit by the late afternoon. We were making things right, said Karen. She pointed to the 8 fruit trees. Krill and the villagers looked back at the fields, and for the first time they noticed the small budding trees. Krill dropped his staff. This can't be. He walked over to the trees and examined them. But how? How is this possible? They have been dead for so long. Krill's voice wavered with emotion. All the villagers began to examine the trees. These are just like the originals, said Chester. He had been the one responsible for their care years ago. Science, Karen said. She stood tall and proud. I have been working on recreating them since we destroyed them. We all felt bad about what happened. We know we messed up and we want to make it up to you. Hopefully this is a start. We aren't those foolish Bigfoots we used to be. I am not the stubborn Bigfoot I used to be. Please forgive us, Krill, and everyone, I said. Krill looked at the trees and then at the villagers for their approval. When do they start producing fruit? Krill asked. You all should be able to eat them this afternoon, Karen said with a smile, and the villagers cheered. It seems you all have taken responsibility for your mistakes and learned a valuable lesson, he said. The corners of his mouth tipped upwards, which was the closest anyone ever got to a smile from Krill. He started to turn and walk back towards the village. Wait, I said. I know this is a lot to ask. I took a deep breath and steadied myself. Bob needs us, and we need your help to get him in time. The rocket is in terrible shape, and if it is just the 4 of us working on it, we will never reach him in time. We need your help along with every villager. I looked him in the eye unwaveringly. My heart was about to beat out of my chest. This was the scariest thing I had ever done. I waited. There was a long silence, and finally Krill sighed. You 4 have earned that right back, and we don't want the humans to discover Bob. Who knows what being in space for 100 years has done to him? He might be so lonely that he would reveal his identity to the humans. Everyone gather around and listen to Bigfoot. He needs us. Everyone did as they were told. This was great. We might actually get to Bob in time. We only had a few days left. I looked at Karen. She was the one who knew how to attack what needed to be done on the spaceship. The old me would have tried to do it myself, but I had learned a lot since then, and now was my chance to prove it. Karen, why don't you take the lead on this one? She beamed and immediately started giving out commands to everyone in the village. We need the engine fixed and the covering of the ship redone. The place looked like a construction site in no time. Yeti's mom came up to him and gave him a hug. He picked her up and spun her around. I was happy for him. I think Yeti is the one who suffered the most when we left the village. I even saw him approach his old girlfriend Tabitha. He seemed to have made up with her because they hugged and she joined in the efforts to rebuild the spaceship. Skunk wasted no time getting back together with his bandmates. It was like he had never left. He showed them some of the riffs he learned from the outside world, and they were all beyond amazed. He had become their hero in a matter of 5 minutes. We knew what we would be listening to tonight. As for Karen, she was in her element, telling villagers what to do left and right. She had immediately reinstituted her irrigation system because she said we needed it for the spaceship rebuild. But we all knew she just wanted it set up again. It would be helpful for the trees after we had left. The spaceship was in working order by the end of the day. Bigfoots can achieve anything when they work together. It is an amazing feeling getting to be part of the team. We all decided to have a community bonfire that night in the middle of the village to celebrate our achievements. We all sat around the campfire, serenaded by Skunk and his band. They had discovered 80s grunge, and it was all they were playing. Yeti sat by his mother and Tabitha. They were all laughing and having a nice time. Even Karen seemed to be enjoying herself. A small group of Bigfoots were sitting in front of her asking questions about the outside world, and she was happy to have an audience. I couldn't help but think of Bob at this moment as I ate my 8 fruit and drank bubbly water. The last time we had been in Bigfoot Village and this happy was the night before the first launch. We were all so excited about what the future would hold. We were about to go where no Bigfoot had gone before, and it had all gone wrong. I took a sip of my bubbly water again. I didn't notice the person sitting beside me until they spoke. Don't worry, this time will be different, said a familiar voice. Krill was sitting beside me eating a fresh ape fruit. How do you know? I asked. He huffed. Because you're different. It is like those science experiments you 5 were so fond of as children. You've changed the variables. He pointed at my chest. You've changed the experiment for the better. He put his large hand on my shoulder. You're going to get Bob back. Look how much you've all grown. Enjoy tonight because you don't know what tomorrow brings. He was right as usual. Krill the Wise was an elder for a reason. So I decided to take his advice and enjoy myself. I ate all the 8 fruit I wanted and danced to Skunk's band under the waxing moon. I like to think I did Bigfoot's proud everywhere. The next morning, we woke up before sunrise. We needed to launch the spaceship as soon as possible. Today was the last day to beat the astronauts to Bob. The villagers had helped us move the spaceship out of the barn, and we had loaded our supplies on the ship yesterday. The villagers had all come out to see us go. Yeti's mom and Tabitha were in the crowd, along with Skunk's bandmates and Karen's work crew. Everyone was there with hopeful faces to wish us luck on our journey. This was completely different from the last time we blasted off from the village. We walked up the steps to the open rocket door. First Skunk, then Yeti, and then Karen. I took one last look at the Bigfoot village, and I saw Krill wave before I shut the door. So much was riding on this rescue mission, and I couldn't let a single one of them down. We settled ourselves into the spaceship and buckled up. It seemed like we were finally getting to the next chapter of our adventure. "Ah, guys, I am so ready for this," Yeti said. He loved any type of flying and wasn't afraid to show it. "I can't wait to see what the universe has in store for us. I bet Bob's gonna have some awesome stories to tell us when we get there," said Skunk. "Engines engaged," Karen said as she flipped the cover off the launch button. "Bigfoot, would you do the honors?" "Here we come, Bob," I said and pushed the button. The engine started to rumble, shaking the ground beneath us, and in a matter of seconds we were thrust into the sky, making our way towards Mars and to our friend Bob.